I'm Lisa Camilleri. My guest today is Raneem El Welily from Egypt. You were the World Junior Champion in 2005, 2007, British Junior Champion under 13 in 2001, under 15 in 2002 and 2003, under 17 in 2004, 2005, under 19 in 2007. The first Egyptian women to become #1 in the world champion 2017. You have been in 53 PSA finals and you have won 24 of those finals. And you're currently ranked #1 in the world. So thanks for joining me here today at Squash Alchemy.
No, thank you, Lisa, and thank you for the wonderful intro.
Yeah, you're welcome. I guess the first question is, how did your squash journey start, and at what age did you start playing?
Yeah, so I was 5, I think, when I first went to a squash facility. My parents took my brother there to find him a coach and start him up with the sport. I would go and watch him play every now and then, especially during the summer. Your parents would just leave you at the club and just leave you there for the all morning. So I would go with him, watch him, sometimes even grab a racket and hit the ball out of the court, obviously. But yeah, eventually at the age of 6, I actually got on court, and yeah, I've been on court ever since.
Yeah, wow. So at the age of 6, did you start getting private lessons, or was it, you just sort of started hitting around, and what was the process?
Well, this is how it worked. You would get private lessons with a coach. At the time, our club had several coaches, and you would just ask one of them if they have any free time, and you'd be on their schedule. Like you said, like at your club, there are courts for the public as well. Not the public, because it's a private club anyway. So for the members. So you could actually rent a court and play on it, or play with your fellow teammates. But I think at the time, to be honest, there wasn't that many girls that played squash. There were a few girls. We had girls in every age category, but I mean, we didn't have a full 16 or 32 draw for every age category. So 1 year later, when I played my first tournament at another club in Alexandria, I actually managed to get the 3rd place. And this was my very first tournament, so I was over the moon happy, obviously.
I see that you joined PSA at the age of 12.
Yeah, it is right, but it isn't as it sounds. At the time, we had tournaments, PSA or WISPA tournaments taking place in Egypt. We had the Hurghada International Open, and we had the Heliopolis Open. And as sort of a competition, our federation, or our national coach at the time, his name was Ahmed Tahir. He thought it would be good if he actually registers us, and then we could actually participate in those tournaments that take place in Egypt. So it was only a regional membership to start with. Obviously, if you actually get in one of these tournaments, you get chopped the first round. After that, my second step was actually going to the tournaments that happened in close countries. So I went to Kuwait, I went to Qatar. I think, yeah, that was pretty much it. And then I started adding the World Championship to this list. So that gave me 5 or 6 tournaments a year at the age of 13 and 14, which is amazing, really. And yeah, I think I started playing, travel the world and actually play at different tournaments at the age of 15 or 16. So not 12. It's not 12.
But it's still saying that, it's such a young age. I mean, most 14, 15-year-old kids, they're not playing on the PSA. So what were some of your motivating components at the time? Was it your parents, your coach, your brother, or was it just a passion for squash? Because like I said, most kids at that age would have felt really daunted, playing on the PSA tour.
Well, pretty much everything that you've just said. That my parents, of course, were the driving force behind every move that I made. My coaches motivated me. My brother was always pushing me to be better, you know, in a in a rivalry way. Like I said, the number of girls playing in Egypt wasn't that high. So if you participate in like 10 tournaments, 10 national tournaments a year, you'd be playing the same people again and again. And this is what actually makes you start wondering, how can I play with other people or different people? And that's your answer. Eventually, you have to actually go abroad and play with other countries, other girls from other nationalities. And that's how it started for me. I started playing at the British Junior Open, the German Junior Open, the Swiss, like taking part in the European circuit in general. And then eventually I turned into the WISPA and the PSA to play.
Yeah, wow. So sort of can you talk us through like your training? So, you know, from the age of 12 to, you know, 15, and then 15 to sort of 19, and then getting more into the, you know, the pro tour. Can you talk to us a little bit how your training would go from week, you know, day to day and then week to week?
Yeah, well, I think when I was very young, as much as it's good to have your parents, you know, like push you and actually set a schedule for you, as much as it's actually also good that you don't follow a very strict schedule, that you just actually jump on court whenever you feel like it. So like I said, the morning session, my parents would just drop me off at the club with my brother. We would play a session with our coach, and then we would be free to just play with our friends or play with our, either play squash or play anything else, whatever we wanted. Just being at the club the whole day was just the fun part of it. So we would jump on court only when we wanted. Obviously, come the evening session, and our parents would be there. My mom especially would be there. She would be actually pushing me to do the right sessions or the right amount of work that I need. This is speaking about the early years. Obviously, it was easier in the summer to actually have more time at the club and hang around with your friends. When it was school time, I actually was very lucky to have a school that started a bit earlier than other schools and finished a bit earlier. So I managed to actually finish school, go for a squash session, go home, have a quick lunch or a snack, and then come back for another session in the evening. Whereas my brother, for instance, his school finished at 3. By the time he got to the club, it was like 5 or 6, so he only could score 1 session a day. It was a mix of a schedule, but not a very fixed one. You have to understand that at the young age, your sessions are not as intense as they are when you are a pro player, and obviously you have more energy than you do than the energy that I have now. So it was easier to just be on court all the time as a kid. Once you turn pro and once you start having a regular schedule, for me, what works best is a fixed routine, not in terms of what I do in the sessions, but in terms of how the day goes. This actually helps me feel that I'm organized and actually have the confidence when the tournament comes that I've put in the work, that I've put in a block of training, that actually would help me stand on my feet and play well in the tournament. So obviously the sessions get more as you grow up, but they also get not as long. They get shorter, because then the quality is really high, and your body would not endure that much anymore.
Okay, so could you go into a little bit more depth on what a standard week would be for Raneem now in training?
So now what I do is I do fitness 5 days a week. So that's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I take Tuesday off, and then I do Wednesday, Thursday. That's my fitness. Well, as to my squash, I do 2 sessions a day, 4 days a week, and then I do 1 session a day, 2 days a week. So that makes Saturday, Sunday 2 sessions, Monday only morning session. So I get half of Monday off. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, I do 2 sessions, morning and evening. And then Thursday, I have half a day off. And then I have Friday as well. So it gives me kind of a day and a half off to get recovered and start another week fresh.
Okay. What are your strengths, both as an athlete and as a person?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think my strength as an athlete would be, I think discipline is my strongest thing. I count on it like 100%, because I know that if I don't do my best during training or like throughout the week, that at the end, if I lose, I would always blame myself. So I'm always very keen on putting in the work and on being very organized and very. 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said my coaches actually pushed me to always do the sessions, but then not 5 or 6, like maybe more than that, 8 or 9 years ago. And then once I decided that squash was going to be the only thing I wanted to do full time, and that this is actually the thing that I'm going to take very serious for the next, I don't know how many years, I actually started pushing myself and actually motivating myself and accepting the fact that this is what I have to do to actually get to the top of the sport.
Yeah, you became the first player in over 9 years to remove Nicole David at the top of the world rankings. How was that feeling?
Yeah, it was a dream of mine. It was a dream of every girl on the tour. Growing up, I've seen Nicole being number 1 for so long. I've seen so many players be number 2 in the world and just not ever being number 1. So I know how difficult that was. In my head for so long, it always felt that I'm going to be number 2 maybe one day, and then that would be it. No one was ever going to actually get past Nicole. So having done that, I think was actually shocking to me, to the point where I actually, once I got to number 1 and actually making it to the top, I actually went all the way down again. So so it was a shock as much as it was disbelief, but it's definitely one of my proudest achievements today.
Yeah, well, you also became, the number 1 in the world, first Egyptian, and you sort of said earlier there weren't too many girls playing when you started playing. So I mean, I know Omneya, she was sort of my age group, so she would have been sort of also one of the first, girls to sort of bring squash in Egypt. But now, I mean, it being so popular, do you feel that you were sort of the start of that era of, bringing through a lot of girls that are playing the sport within Egypt now?
Yeah, well, growing up, I think for me, the first 2 names that I recognized were Salma Shabana, Amr Shabana's sister, and Mahazen. They were the 2 top Egyptian players. After that came the generation of Angie Khairallah, Omneya, and Iman Amir, Nisreen Nashat. There are other names, obviously, but I don't want to be like naming just a few. So yeah, Omneya was the one closest to my age at the time. Having been good at my age, actually helped me travel to the international tournaments at a very young age, and actually get to talk to them, be around those girls, and yeah, Omneya, Angie, and Iman, they all took me under their wing, if that's what you say. And they showed me the way. They've definitely carved the way for us, and they've taken so many steps. Omneya is definitely an icon in Egypt when it comes to squash. So many people know her. We had the Hurghada International Tournament that was very big in the past, and Omneya was always the name that went with Hurghada Open. So whenever you mentioned Hurghada, everyone would say Omneya. So yeah, I believe Omneya was an icon, is still an icon of the Egyptian squash. Having followed her footsteps and NG's as well, has helped me reach the highs of the sport. So if I am someone who did what they've done to me, for me, to others, then yeah, I'd be very grateful, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Wow,
now
wow,
the
cool.
numbers now are crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, very strong. You sort of mentioned, you sort of, they took you under their wing, but when you sort of see all of you at a tournament, you're all very supportive of each other, and you look like a very, a close family, and it's such a nice thing to see because, for instance, I mean, for myself, when we traveled away, Australians don't really come together, or we're sort of not as close as what you guys look as though you are when you're at a tournament. So how do you create that bonding? Because I mean, you're all competing against each other, but then you've also got such a close community off the court. How is that created? Is that created through your training environment, or is that just something that's cultural?
Yeah, well, the training environment is definitely one of the big factors. We see each other almost every day. Squash is only played in two cities, two major cities. We have other cities as well, but it's Cairo and then Alexandria, and then you have Tanta, Sharm el-Sheikh, a few other cities, but you don't have that big numbers of players that you have in Cairo and Alexandria. So having squash in only two cities helps you actually see each other every day, if not every week at least. Obviously, Cairo is a huge city, so not everyone trains at the same place. But it's very easy to see each other throughout the week, throughout the month. We get together all the time. Not so many times off court, but at least when you're like at the national stadium, for instance, you're bound to run into so many great players such as Ali Noor Tayyib, Omar Mosad, Karim Sami, Mohamed Abulghar, all those big names in the sport. It's very easy to get together and to feel like a family, the family that you see sometimes. We have a lot of numbers, and Egyptians tend to be shy. At least my generation growing up was a little bit shy. So whenever I traveled, I would just be with Omneya and NG, for example, feeling shy of actually talking to other players or to to players that don't speak Arabic. I was a little bit shy growing up. But now the generations, wow, they're fierce, they're brave, they're courageous, they have no fear at all. So yeah, I think a lot of the Egyptian players have actually friendships outside the Egyptian team. But as a whole, I think we actually tend to stick together. Yes.
Yeah, it's so nice to see. Your husband, Tarek Momen, who's number 4 in the world currently, that must be a nice thing. I mean, you guys must travel a lot together at tournaments, and having your husband at the tournament, that must be nice to be together and have that support. How does that feel?
Yeah, well, again, in the past, I never imagined myself ending up with someone from the Squash Society. I always thought I'd like to keep my private life away from my squash life. But what do you know? I ended up marrying someone who is a top player, who travels to most of the tournaments that I travel to. It's actually very nice that we get to share those moments together, the good and the bad, really. It's like the good moments, it's very nice to actually witness them, but the bad moments, I know how hard it is when you lose a match, but you're at the end of the world from your loved ones, and you've got no support. So it's good to have someone there.
What challenges did you overcome in getting to where you are today?
I think throughout my career, I've learned so many lessons. It's hard to actually pinpoint it to one thing. Like I said before, growing up, I realized early on that squash was the thing that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. That obviously was a good thing in so many ways, but it also had its negative points. Well, when things got bad for me on court, I kind of had no way out. It was the only thing that I was doing. So I remember one year when my results weren't as good as I expected them to be, or weren't as satisfying as I'd hoped. I remember deciding to retire and not play ever again. I've hit this point so many times throughout my career, but I think the biggest challenge would always be, finding the motivation again, and actually training harder to actually achieve your targets, or not to give up on the work that you've put in, on the years that you've put in the sport. Because so many times it wasn't just my effort, it was my coach's effort, it was my parents' effort, my family, my friends, they all supported me through the years. So giving that up was always very hard to do. I faced a lot of challenges, but yeah, like I said, throughout your career, you kind of face things, and this is actually how you grow, how you develop yourself. It's part of everything in life, the ups and downs. So accepting the downs was the challenging part for sure, but I've always come back stronger from my downs or from my mistakes, and learned from them. So I think this is the good part about it.
So what's next for yourself? I mean, you're currently ranked #1. So how do you keep motivated, and what's next?
Yeah, well, I think the season of 2018-2019 for me was my best season ever, which is why I got to #1 in the first place. Maybe last season, or the season that we didn't complete, wasn't as good as the one before. It still wasn't a bad one. I still made it to a lot of finals of the tournaments. I managed to win at San Francisco. I didn't lose to any unseeded players. They were all very strong competitors and very strong players on the day. So maybe not the results that I'd hoped for this season, but definitely not a bad one, to say the least. I'm still very proud of the fact that I managed to stay #1 for all this time. It's definitely longer than the last time. So yeah, how to stay motivated is actually a very important question, especially at these crazy times where we're actually stuck at home, having zero control over anything, and lacking obviously the motivation to stay fit and to stay disciplined while being at home. It's tough, to be honest, but I think if we've learned anything this phase, it's going to be the fact that we have no control over anything, and that we just have to take things day by day as they come. So for the time, I have no goals at all. I'm just enjoying the fact that we can take things easy, and that we can actually take our time and reflect on things and see things and analyze a lot of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, this time, as you mentioned, you're at home, obviously in lockdown. Can you remember last time you had so much time off like this?
No, I don't think it ever happened. Even the patch where I told you that I've decided to retire, I don't think it was that long of a break. I think it was maybe a month and a half, 2 months, but I think this time it's definitely so much longer. Our perspective has changed definitely. At least as a professional athlete, when I was young, having a break to me meant doing nothing at all and sitting on the couch the whole day, hanging out with my friends. But now your perspective as an athlete changes. Once you've become professional, you realize that working out or staying fit has nothing to do with the fact that you have tournaments or not. So I'm trying my best to stay fit, to stay motivated, but it's tough.
Yeah, I could imagine, because I know when I was playing, I would have dreamed sometimes to have a break like this, because you get so exhausted of the travel and the training and the playing, and
especially for you being in Australia, you had to travel a long way as well.
Yeah. Last question. What advice would you give to a junior wanting to pursue squash as their main sport?
Well, I've mentioned discipline in this interview. I've mentioned getting back up from when you get hit. I think the best advice I can give is I've said this before. I think uh, a person should do their best on the day, whatever their best is. You know, we're not going to be 100% perfect every day. It's impossible. It's against human nature. So if your best today is 60%, then give that 60%. Don't give less than that. So every day, give your best. Do your hardest. Push yourself to the maximum, and then I'm pretty sure eventually the hard work will pay off one day.
Yeah, well, that's such good advice, and it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today and
Thank you.
giving all the audience some tips and great knowledge on how you've made it to #1 in the world and doing so great. So thanks for your time, Raneem.
Thank you, Lisa.